I'm Venetia Argyropoulou. I am a lawyer and an academic, focusing mostly on economic and human rights law. And this is why this project was very enlightening for me in many ways and has sparked new interests for me. I did the data collection for Greece and Cyprus, both the quantitative and the qualitative phase, and this is what I will be briefly presenting to you today. So in terms of the number of responses to the quantitative survey, in Cyprus there were a total of 354 responses, while in Greece there were 401 responders, the majority of which comprised mainly of lawyers, followed by judges, followed by experts, and approximately 28% in both countries, a little bit more, a little bit less in each country, were the beneficiaries. So in terms of the question of whether cultural expertise can be perceived useful, for Greece and Cyprus, the notion of cultural expertise was rather unknown, but only because the term itself was not previously used before Livia brought it to life. So when I started explaining what cultural expertise meant, responders started reacting positively, recognizing the importance of cultural expertise, and indicatively, in both Greece and Cyprus, the most common response to the question regarding the usefulness of cultural expertise was very useful, followed by moderately useful, and a very, very small percentage, below 5%, was that it was not useful at all. In fact, it's important to say that Greece was the second highest position in terms of the perception of usefulness of cultural expertise. Now, despite, however, respondents considering cultural expertise very useful, this notion is still new, and the instances where cultural experts were appointed before courts were rather low in both Greece and Cyprus. Indicatively, you can see here the chart for Cyprus, and to the question how many experts were instructed annually, most responding judges and lawyers chose between 10 and 20. In Greece, the number of appointments were even less, with, as you can see here very clearly, the majority of responding judges and lawyers, almost 52%, chose less than 10 experts were appointed annually. Now I have to say something. We're talking about courts, and in Cyprus, the data that were collected were before the introduction of the Court for International Protection, which has increased the number of cultural experts appointments greatly. This was an important development. Now, in those instances where experts were in fact appointed, it is important to see what kind of experts are we talking about. And here you will see the chart for Cyprus. And as you can see on the chart, predominantly the type of experts that were appointed were native lawyers that presumably acted as liaisons amongst the parties and the courts. This is because they had knowledge of both the language, the native language, and the court procedures that gave them this benefit. And they were followed by religious leaders and country experts, and I believe that in that country experts, NGOs were taken into account. University professors were also appointed, and it's good to refer that most of them were either history-related, law-related, and anthropologists. In Greece as well, we see that the typology of experts involves experts knowing the language. And again, here we can think of them as cultural mediators, and a very large number of experts include NGOs. Moving to the remuneration of experts, in Cyprus, the parties can freely decide the terms of expert remuneration, which can vary from a fixed amount per report, or it can be hourly fees, depending on the hours spent. Usually, the party paying the fees is the party appointing the experts, but the court has the discretion to dictate otherwise. In Greece, the situation is not like this, and as a written winner takes all, meaning that it is for the unsuccessful party in a dispute to incur the costs in connection with any appointment of expert or referee. And again, the fees can be either a fixed amount or per report or based on hourly fees. Now, in terms of the fields of law, the most common field of law in which cultural expertise was used. I'm going to start with Greece here, and I'm going to explain why Cyprus is a bit different. In Greece, it was mostly refugee and asylum, and I'm very happy that we have Mrs. Halkia here that's going to speak a little bit more about this, followed closely by immigration law, family law, and international human rights law, both all of these areas being intertwined. And in Cyprus, the picture is similar, but you can see here an interesting twist. You'll see that the biggest percentage was in banking and investment law, and you might ask yourselves why that is the case. My belief is that these are linked to AML, anti-money laundering investigations, and extraditions relating to money laundering. So going now to the types of cases, as discussed, the most common types of cases relate to international protection, asylum, and refugee law. And many cases and expert reports focus on that and focus specifically on the notion of a safe third country and the risk of persecution. We have some cases that relate to racism and hate crimes, some cases that relate to extradition risks as previously discussed, and of course there are cases that are very specific to specific events, for example, the Turkey's coup. In relation to sites of cultural expertise that are not in court, because as Livia mentioned, we take cultural expertise to be very broadly defined. There are various sites where cultural expertise is given, both in Greece and in Cyprus, and you can see here the relevant spots where there are some centers offering cultural expertise. In Cyprus, NGOs play a very important role in developing and delivering out-of-court cultural expertise, and they engage in various projects, often involving schools, involving universities, involving hospitals and detention centers. And in Greece, again, we see a similar picture, and by clicking in the interactive map, you can see some of these examples. But in Greece, it's important to also mention that there are other cultural expertise sites, including Cultural Civil Union, created by professional associates for foreigners established in Greece. Now, last but not least, because my time is running up, and Joshua kindly reminds me, the main sites of, going back to the main sites of cultural expertise, it's very difficult to pinpoint and say this specific site is a main site, because there are so many and offering similar services. I'll just mention indicatively to give you an example of what type of sites we're talking about. So you can see here in the healthcare center, there is universities like the European University of Cyprus offering transcultural training for nurses. And there is similar training for doctors and similar training for educators. So we see also public institutions offering cultural training and language training in across the jurisdictions. I will finish my presentation saying that from the research, one of the main obstacles that was recognized in terms of cultural expertise in Cyprus was the lack of information in terms of where cultural experts are and what are the available cultural experts. And for these reasons, respondents have suggested that a list of cultural experts based on their field of expertise should be created and made available online. And hopefully, your expert can assist and facilitate this request.